Welcome to the Blaze TV booth here at AmFest 2025. Roger Stone, the great Patriot Roger Stone, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
How do you feel here at AmFest? What's the energy like?
It's actually incredible. There were, I think, 20,000 people here when I spoke last year. There are 30,000 young people here. The energy is incredible. Out of Charlie's death comes a new determination,
yes.
a new spirit of fight. People realize that his death should not be in vain.
Yeah.
People I talk to about the 2026 election here, they're talking about victory. That's what they're talking about.
I love that. So do you think that we will see that going into the midterms?
Well, look, in American politics, a week is a lifetime. Our media moves so quickly. Our news cycles move so quickly.
Yeah.
But the fundamentals that President Trump has laid in terms of his tax cuts, his regulatory cuts, his trade policies, his environmental policies, his immigration policies, the stage is set for America to enjoy a golden age of peace, prosperity, security, justice, and law and order. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I worked for Ronald Reagan. By the end of 1981, we had a lot of panicins. Oh my God, the tax cuts aren't working. The regulatory cuts aren't working.
Right.
By 1982, we had a strong economy. By 1984, we had a boom economy. I think it's going to be very similar.
Yeah, I mean, it took 4 years for Joe Biden to run this country into the ground the way that it did. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to get results overnight trying to overcome all of that. But certainly he's done more than any other president that I can remember.
It's amazing how much he's accomplished in less than a year, particularly with a Congress that, let's face it, has not been all that cooperative.
No, they haven't.
Our margin in the House is so incredibly thin. I like Speaker Johnson. I think he's a good man. He's got an impossible job.
Yeah.
More than half of the people in his caucus don't want to do anything other than collect their paycheck and get reelected.
Yeah.
And then he's got great members like Anna Paulina Luna
Yes.
and others who want to fight to fundamentally reform the country. So he's got a very difficult job. If we can expand our margin in both houses, there's no question we will get more done. But in order to do that, I think the economy is already set. It's just going to keep getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Food prices are down, but they're not down far enough.
Sure.
Gas prices are really coming down quickly. When we get a non-politicized Federal Reserve Board, we're going to get deeper interest cuts, deeper interest rate cuts commensurate with the level of inflation and the level of unemployment, because the Fed cut rates for Joe Biden when those indicators were not as favorable as they are today.
Right.
But I think that's going to cause a housing boom in the country. So I think that part of it is done. There's two other things that we need to do. One, we must have accountability and justice regarding those people who broke the law and the Constitution in their manic effort to destroy Donald Trump and his presidency.
Yes.
And that remains to be seen.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we have to have honest elections. It doesn't matter how successful the president's policies are. If we don't have honest elections, we cannot win. That's why I'm glad to see that Tulsi Gabbard is heading up a task force studying the integrity and the security of these electronic voting machines, and to examine paper ballots and mail-in ballots and the role they played in our last two elections. Those are the keys to victory.
Yeah, you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard, and just to talk about you for a moment, you know, you're no stranger to the deep state and the weaponization of the justice system. You're kind of one of the OGs of all of that. Obviously, you were indicted and convicted over the Russian collusion hoax, of which now we always knew, but now with Tulsi Gabbard releasing all these documents, now we know for certain, legalese, you have to say with a very high degree of confidence, that this was, of course, it started at the top with Obama. Obama was involved in these meetings.
Yes.
James Comey was involved in these meetings. And what was going through your head when you saw Tulsi Gabbard dump all of these documents and see on paper they did it the entire time, and then they weaponized the justice system against you?
Well, as you know, John Radcliffe was the CIA director during Trump's first term. He could have declassified all these documents, but he didn't. I think he's a good man. I don't know why he didn't do that.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard, I think, has been great. And it's now no longer out for debate. It's not conjecture. It's not supposition. There was a seditious conspiracy that began in 2016 in a White House meeting. Barack Obama was there. Joe Biden was there. Susan Rice was there. The Islamic convert, CIA director, communist John Brennan was there. James Comey was there. Susan Rice was there. And that seditious conspiracy takes you through the Russian collusion hoax, takes you through two completely fraudulent impeachments, takes you through the rigged 2020 election. Sorry if I don't believe 81 million people voted for a veritable vegetable who couldn't leave his basement to campaign. Takes you through the so-called January 6th fiasco, takes you through the documents case and the outrageous raid on Donald Trump's home in Florida. That is one straight line, one seditious conspiracy. There is no statute of limitations. The conspirators involved can be charged with crimes anytime, and they should be charged in the Southern District of Florida, where the conspiracy ended.
Okay, so I love that you mentioned that, because I think that obviously the Trump administration has done really great things, but the one thing I think that is festering up, is bubbling up within America and the American people, is we do want that accountability that you mentioned before. We want accountability. If Barack Obama was involved in seditious conspiracy, I don't care if he was a former president. I want him hauled in as well. The way that they treated you, the way that they treated Steve Bannon, the way that they treated President Trump with 91 indictments and 34 felony counts, they deserve accountability, because it turns out they were the real criminals in the first place.
There's no worse example than the case of James Comey.
Yes.
Let's be very clear. Comey and I are charged with the exact same crime.
Yeah.
The difference is he lied to Congress about material matters and he covered up underlying crimes. No misstatement I made to Congress covered up the Russian collusion. Why? Because there was no Russian collusion to cover up. I was charged to pressure me into testifying falsely against President Trump, which I refused to do.
Sure.
But why does the FBI raid my home at 6 o'clock in the morning, yet James Comey's allowed to wander in 2 weeks later after he's indicted to surrender? Why am I gagged by a federal judge? I can't defend myself. He's not gagged. Why am I not allowed to argue that I was selectively prosecuted or prosecuted for political reasons when he's allowed to make that argument? And then, remember the crime. He's specifically charged with lying when he said that he never gave documents that were classified to a third party and instructed them to leak them. Yet we have the email in which he did exactly that. Yet the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia was preparing to dismiss the charges against him. And then they actually gave the evidence back to his co-conspirator. A judge ordered that the evidence that was collected in a criminal investigation be returned to his co-conspirator. That is outrageous. And remember, they dismissed that case not on the facts, not on a trial, on a technicality in which they incorrectly said the prosecutor Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed. Nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I recall hearing about the perp walk, right? Now all of a sudden when it's James Comey, they're like, the FBI doesn't do perp walks. They don't tip off the media. And I'm like, Roger Stone would beg to differ, I believe.
Yeah, the raid on my home cost the taxpayers $1.1 million.
Wow.
Look, I was arrested at 6:11. At 6:22, somebody from CNN texted a copy of my sealed indictment to my attorney. Was not unsealed until 11:30 that morning. And it had no time stamps or court markings on it, but if you looked at the metadata tags, it had the initials of the man who wrote it, the epically corrupt prosecutor Andrew Weissman. Therefore, he's the one who leaked it. And leaking an arrest warrant or a search warrant in advance to it being executed is a felony. But of course, he hasn't been prosecuted.
And that's what's so frustrating, I think, for the American people, is that we are ready for that accountability. I think that it's why people voted for President Trump in November, and I think last November, and I think that we are we're ready. We're ready for accountability for what happened to you and what happened to President Trump and what happened to so many others. Do you worry that there is still there's still a pretty bad problem with the deep state?
Oh, I think it is. It continues to this day.
Yeah.
They cooked the trial of James Comey.
Yeah.
There's 4 judges there who need to be impeached. Every one of them violated the judicial canon of ethics. Mike Johnson, what are you doing, dude?
I know.
Just introduce the articles of impeachment and bring them up to the Hill for hearings to explain their rulings. It just doesn't seem to happen. So I think that they've cooked that trial. I think that there are elements in our government who are fighting Tulsi Gabbard's effort to get at the truth of the security of the electronic voting machines, the involvement of Venezuela and in China in both. You know, the deep state is very much alive. They think they can wait Donald Trump out.
Right.
I think they're wrong, but they're going to try.
Well, how do we get rid of them faster? Like, if you were giving advice to President Trump, what would you say? How do we get rid of them faster?
We need a more activist Justice Department. And again, we have to bring these crimes in jurisdictions where we can have a fair, non-politicized trial. Bringing anybody involved in the epic corruption of the Biden or Obama years to trial in Washington, D.C. is a waste of time. In Washington, D.C., in front of a Democrat judge, the Constitution, the law, the rules, the facts, the evidence, these things don't matter. I have a list of judges who need to be impeached based on their violation of their oaths. It's not that complicated.
Is Judge Boasberg on that list?
He certainly should be on that list.
Yeah.
I think that legislation has actually been sponsored. But
By my representative, by the way, Brandon.
But Andy Biggs made a very good point. There is a provision in the Constitution in which a judge can be removed for bad behavior and doesn't require a 2/3 vote of the Senate. It's time to start removing some of these tyrannical federal judges and do so legally.
Yeah. So what advice would you give Republicans moving into the midterms? I know you sound very positive, optimistic about the midterms, but what advice would you give them moving into the midterms?
We have to deliver for the American people.
Yeah.
We have to deliver economically. We have to deliver in terms of protecting our country from the influx of fentanyl and cocaine coming from the South. The fight over Venezuela is not about regime change. The fight about Venezuela is about stopping the flow of deadly drugs from Venezuela to Honduras to the United States. And the American people need to understand that. This is not like the Iraq War,
right,
when there was never any good reason
right,
for that war. And then we have to also keep faith with those voters that we promised that we would make America healthy again. And I think RFK is doing that as we speak.
Yeah, he is. Before I let you go, Roger, tell us, what are you up to these days?
I have a new book coming out on the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. If you go file a Freedom of Information Act on those documents, you'll learn nothing whatsoever. It's all blacked out.
All redacted.
So I have interviewed Secret Service agents, doctors, witnesses, many others who were involved that day. There was a conspiracy involving our own government to kill Reagan. That will be the bottom line of my book. I'll give you a teaser. The title of it is Bushwhacked, the real story of the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. I'm also working on a book on my own experience fighting the Mueller investigation. It's very hard to do. It's not cathartic.
Yeah.
Gives me PTSD. I can work on it for about an hour and then I just want to puke.
Yeah.
But it'll be finished soon. And of course, I still do a daily syndicated radio show 5 days a week at 77 WABC, the most powerful AM radio signal in the United States.
How do you have time for all of this? What are you, a machine?
Good question. My wife wants to know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you and all of your great work that you have been doing for so many decades. And it's funny, some of my colleagues are like, you're interviewing the Patriot Roger Stone. So you are very well loved here at AmFest, and I appreciate you,
That's
sir.
very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.